Welcome back. It's the Money Line with Nancy, and our second conversation is starting immediately. We're looking at the creative industry in Nigeria and harnessing the potentials in the creative industry. And who better than to discuss this with us than experts in the field of the creative industry? We have John, okay? He's joining us now, the creative director of Makulu. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome again, John. Now, I want to immediately start by asking you, to give us an overview of what Nigeria's creative industry currently is like.
Thank you for having me on the program. First and foremost, when you talk about the creative industry in Nigeria, the first thing that comes to mind is entertainment and the arts. But there are several, layers of sister industries and ancillary industries or sectors within the industry. You have fashion, you have entertainment, you have fashion, you have the digital industry. Where you have animation. If you look at this recent film, Wakanda in South Africa, that grossed over hundreds of millions of dollars, you see that it's a huge industry. But in Nigeria, yes, in spite of underperformance in a lot of other sectors of the economy, the creative industry has continued to grow, and is being driven mainly, by the fashion industry. We can say that individual efforts and expertise, by practitioners has helped the industry grow. Yes, there is government support, but, it's not structured, it's not sustainable. So overall, you could say the creative industry is thriving, is doing well, but it can do, far better than it's doing currently.
So you see, since they are doing well, they are striving. So what are the challenges of the industry so far? What challenges can you focus on?
There's near absolute lack of data. And that without data you can't plan, you can't project. No industry is sustainable without data. And beyond that, there is not sustainable support for the industry. So there needs to be appropriate policy frameworks to support learning, to support entrepreneurship development. Because as a creative person, whether you're a writer, whether you're a musician, whether you are a fashion entrepreneur, you need to have entrepreneurship skills. You need to be able to keep your records. You need to be able to have financial skills, to do financial planning. So if you're not able to do that, you're going to run into problems. So one of the biggest challenges is that is a lack of there is too much segmentation, and then there is not enough support from the government side to make sure that there are policy frameworks and mechanisms to sustain entrepreneurship development.
Talking about support, you just mentioned government support. I want you to probably expand on that, what you mean in terms of support, and then we also look at the private sector, because like you said, the Wakanda that you've spoken about had support, especially from the banks and all of those. There is a foreign bank that actually supported that. Now let's look at Nigeria in terms of bank support, government support. What is it like?
As I said, without enacting appropriate policy frameworks, that support won't come. You can't galvanize the individual skills, the innate skills that the industry is built on, without proper policy frameworks. Now, if you look at, I think either last year or 2 years ago, the government set up, a support fund for the entertainment industry. You shouldn't isolate where you give support or where you create policies. It should be all encompassing. The private sector, yes, but how difficult it is to get fund or financial support to start a business. Now, when I created my fashion brand, it was personal effort all through. If you look at what our entertainers are doing, if you look at what is happening in the Nollywood, these are mostly self-help, self-effort, and when you lose everything. So when we have support from government first.
Talking about some of risk financing from government. You mean in case?
No, well, risk financing can be part of it, but there should be support to build capacity. Capacity is everything. You could see in the fashion industry, you see when people set up newly, you have to go to Senegal, you have to go to all of these African countries to get tailors. If you want to shoot a film, so most times we have to go to South Africa now because there's a film village, to shoot a film. So support from government does not just mean money. it could be technical support, it could be, it could be infrastructure. So, there are varied ways the government can come. But I think when the government comes and there is stability, then the private sector can come, because the private sector is there to make money, to make profit. But government is not there to make profit. Government is there to create an enabling environment, for, industries to thrive. In fact, part of the solution, that's why, we are working hard, to convene a national policy dialogue for the fashion industry. Forgive me, I keep going back to the fashion industry because that is where I'm a practitioner, or that I've been in entrepreneurship for, quite some time. So this policy dialogue now will bring stakeholders together, because it's important to articulate what the issues are. Is it learning, which is a big problem? Is it fragmentation? How do we coagulate, and bring efforts together, to decide on how to move the country forward? So, the fragmentation, the need for sustainable learning, the need for, to develop capacity, especially, all justification now for us to actually, hold, the policy dialogue.
Okay. According to Euro Monitor, Sub-Saharan Africa's apparel and footwear market is reportedly worth over $31 billion. Nigeria's apparel and footwear market is estimated to have a market value of $4.7 billion. Have we really harnessed the potentials in this apparel industry? And because this might just be data, as you have said, it might be data, but in reality, is this? Do you support this, that Nigeria's market value of apparels is worth 4.7, and have we harnessed it?
We've not scratched the surface. Now, let's start from the global picture. The global fashion industry is valued at over $1.3 trillion. Yes. I think in 2015, China's revenue from just sale of textiles came at over $17 billion. So that is so much for a country like ours that has a population of over 180 million. Estimated. And then I think the African fashion industry, is valued at it's currently at $16 billion, and their projections it will grow to $30 billion in the next 5 years. And given that one in every 6 black people is Nigerian, I think we should play very, very significant and prominent role in what happens in the creative industry. But we are not doing that because of deep fragmentation and the lack of structured frameworks to be able to harness what the potentials are. So to answer your questions directly, we have not scratched the surface. There's so much potential, in terms of job creation, in terms of youth engagement, in terms of increasing personal confidence, in terms of women empowerment. Because at the end of the day, you have to link this to the role women will play. The creative industry is an industry, that is gender sensitive. And for me, when you empower the woman, you empower the family unit, because it all starts in the family, from the family unit. If there's stability there, there's stability across board. You understand? So, I think we need to take a holistic look at the industry. We, need stakeholders to come together to, evaluate what we're doing so far, which I think is not enough. Yes, government is trying its best. The Ministry of Arts and Culture have signed several MOUs with industry practitioners. Yes, to practitioners. But it goes beyond signing of MOUs. Is there the political will to make sure that they are implemented? You understand? And are there benchmarks? What are the expected outcomes? For the inputs government makes. What are the sustainability plans for for projects? You look at what Rwanda has done with their economy. They've exited AGOA. They've banned the production of used, clothes. You understand? So,
that's getting bashing from.
Well, every economy is self-interested. You have to, look at where you have competitive advantage. You understand? Now, we have a population of 1.3 billion in Africa. We should have, an entertainment ecosystem. And then we're even talking about digital products in the industry. The UK, exports over 130 million, pound, worth of, digital products and services in the industry. So, and what are we doing? Given our population, we should have, you know, a closed ecosystem, a sustainable, you know, a creative industry ecosystem, you know, where you can come in and get what you want, how you want it. We should be leading and not following in that industry.
The aspect of brands in Nigeria that have currently, we want to say, that are a bit up there. Let's look at how much of sales and promotion, you know, these people are having, especially on the international scene, because they have probably need to draw others up. Can we say that our brands, you know, are actually out there internationally?
Well, there are pockets of success, and as I keep saying, and I won't tire to say that, most of them are, you know, efforts, you know, individuals who understand the industry, who are determined, you know, to succeed in the industry, you know, pulling their own strings and then putting their brands, you know, out there. You know, but if there is no institutional effort to codify, you know, how we approach, you know, branding, you know, how we, you know, raise the funds, because cost of production is significantly high, you know, here. You know, we are not able to compete, you know, with international brands, you know, as an economy, as a group, you know. But if we look at scale based on our national population, you know, then we can do, you know, far better. Yes, there are successes, but they are usually based on, you know, efforts by individual brands, you know, not as a collective, as an economy.
Virtually all sectors in Nigeria, we always talk about policies. But when the actual question is, what sort of policies would you want that would drive the creative industry?
One, the policy should be targeted.
Yes,
first foremost, in specific areas. First foremost, the capacity.
How would you want it to appear in capacity?
You know, for now, I'll use an elementary example. You know, in most other countries, you know, there are certifications. Okay. We call them, you know, trade tests before you can be an artisan in any industry. You know, like in the fashion industry now, there are over 400,000 artisans, you know, just in the north here. Across board, Nigeria, looking at over 2 million artisans within the fashion industry. You know, so there's just certification. You know, someone maybe has tried to be a mechanic, it doesn't work. The person tries to maybe, you know, hook a few bros, it doesn't work. He said, okay, let me go and learn tailoring. Then you tell him or her this thing will take for you to gain the proficiency required to function in this industry, that you need 6 months of training. Then he or she does it for 2.5 hours and tells you, I know how to cut, how to design and cut, so I'll break it on my own. So you find out that the person spends the next 2 years, you know, drifting in the industry, you know, making, you know, causing trouble for himself and, you know, giving a bad image, you know, to the creative industry. So it's important that the first policy should, you know, target building capacity. Okay. Should we, you know, I think we should have a board or an agency that certifies, you know, people in the creative industry, so that there's a minimum standard, a minimum, you know, level of proficiency that you need to function in the industry. You know, then technical support. You know, the creative industry is going digital. Because if you're looking at maybe a subsector like animation is the next big thing. When you do an animated advert, it cuts your costs by sometimes up to 60%. So what are we doing? The technology is very key. And without power, which is the key infrastructure to implement technology, you can't go anywhere. You know, there are softwares now that are out there that, you know, could, you know, help you take measurements. You don't have to be with a client to be able to take the person's measurement and address the person's issue. So, you know, policy, you know, first, capacity building. You know, second, how do we galvanize the industry? You know, how do we build, you know, create data about, you know, individual skills, individual preferences, and so on and so forth. So I think that is, you know, where we should start.
So we should have checkmates. We should have a sector that checkmates, like what Sun does. That's standard organization of Nigeria. Yes. Okay, we should have the one for creative industry that will checkmate all what the subsectors are doing, and they also build on capacity building.
Yes, yes.
One, we want to find out if, like, the issue you've just raised about having people, you know, be in a place, get trained for a certain period of time before certification, if it's actually rocket science, because I'll be looking at a situation where you get a big space, put in machines there, and have this probably registered, and then you train them. Is it actually rocket science for government to do?
It is not. It is not actually, and it comes to an understanding and appreciation of the value of the industry. And then capacity building, it goes beyond being able, if we're talking about the fashion industry, like being able to design or cut or sew and so on and so forth.
It's starting from the elementary base now, so to say.
Yeah, it's not rocket science at all. It's not rocket science at all. It can be done. It has been done, and it will be done. That is why, as I mentioned earlier on, the national policy dialogue, that we intend to, we're working towards holding, to bring stakeholders together. We need to understand the issues. We need to talk to each other, and then, share experiences, and then decide on, the best, foot forward.
If you get to ask some key major players in the creative industry, one of the major issues is piracy. Piracy, this is coming from the creative angle of entertainment, Nollywood. They have been focused so much on piracy, the issue of piracy, curbing down the input that they should make. What do you think should be done effectively to tackle the issue of piracy in the creative industry?
Well, for piracy, for me, I think desperation is one of the issues, one of the factors that influences proliferation. But I think at the end of the day, we need to strengthen the piracy laws. Then there needs to be robust deployment of technology, because at the end of the day, when you're talking of control measures, if you look at talk about the music industry, most of a lot of songs are going to the cloud. So you need to apply technology now to have control, of the cyberspace. Then beyond that, I think there's also a law enforcement component. It's important that an example is made of people who have been found guilty or culpable in acts of piracy.
Well, finally, for me, before we round up, looking at the aspect of appreciating our brands, what do we need to do? Because we have good products. When they go out, it's from Nigeria, that's it. But if they have a name of a label of probably a foreign designer or something on it, people buy it.
Well, we need to rebuild confidence. In fact, that is actually what I've tried to do with my brand. We need to rebuild confidence in our products, in our brands. It goes beyond money. For me, that's why the Renaissance should be like a cultural revolution. We need to rebuild confidence.
It has to start
in
with
our
us.
brands. You have to start. Yeah, you have to start with us. We wouldn't patronize, pay lip service to the need to patronize Nigerian brands. We need to embody it. We need to take it personal, and from there we can expect that globally,
well, that's the truth. The creative industry is a major sector in Nigeria's economy, and it will play a very vital role in the Nigerian economy. But we've heard from one of the subsectors in the creative sector. Subsequently, we'll bring you more editions of other sectors, other subsectors that play a very vital role in the creative industry. Thank you so much, Mr. John Oke, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your inside analysis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's much that we can take for today and the week. Thank you for being a part of it. I am Ehizo J. Momo. Let's do this again next week. Do have yourself a lovely weekend.
And I'm Henry Isom.